All right.
Yes.
Hey, everybody. We're here to talk about web views and all their glory and how we can make them better. I created two issues that I was hoping that everyone would get a chance to look at. You don't have to have done it today. Um, I'm mostly just kind of like proposing these, and let's see what general vibes are and see if people like this. Is this a good change? Is this a positive direction? And if so, we can start prioritizing it and things like that. I'll first go through the individual proposals, and I'm going to share my screen, and then I'll walk through some code if we've got some time, and then feel free to jump in and ask questions or cut me off at any point. Um, all right, let me start up with some proposals. So a lot of this comes out of thinking about web views and thinking about how they were first originally kind of conceived and created, and then also, can you all see my screen? Is that happening?
Yeah, but you
Okay.
can make the font a bit bigger probably. You have enormously wide screen.
I do. What is so Mac? How do I zoom in on a Mac for this?
Command roll
Command
wheel.
plus.
That works too.
Uh, oh, wheel. Oh, come on.
Come on.
Hey, I'm a 90s
Okay.
kid. Come on.
Oh man.
Okay.
Ah, sorry. I at the
That's
moment
okay. That's okay.
there's got to be a there's oh there we go. We'll just go with this. Yay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Like old man over here can't
Yeah, that's exactly for me now. Okay, thank
uh
you.
okay. Well, I'm not talking about how big. I couldn't even figure out how to use the computer for a bit. So, all right, here we go. So thinking about web views, one of the things that has comes up pretty often is going, okay, well, we know we don't always need a connection to an editor. We don't always need a connection to a web view. We're talking about plugins that, like we've been talking about plugins that maybe don't need a web view connected and they just provide some sort of service or an API. And I started realizing I think a lot of the reason that we're doing that is because there's been so much friction to adding new JSON RPC endpoints. Um, some of that is, some of that is historical because we had one big file and there was always like this, concern of, well, we're sort of polluting the file. And then I know there's been work to break it out, but I was like, maybe we need to have a cleaner way to define these endpoints co-located with other pieces. So this first proposal was, can we build something that has like almost like a contribution pattern? And the idea behind this was you'd have a class that implements something like an LS contribution provider, which has a function that returns back an object that contains notifications and requests. With their proper method names. And you can provide handlers and potentially provide things like, hey, this is a validation, of is the message that has been returned to us what we expect. So, and this now can all be, essentially because we're using DI, this could be this could be declared anywhere in as long as it's registered with the dependency injection framework. And the goal would be that our sort of language server runtime setup function would say, hey, DI, give me everything that's an LS contribution provider, and let me start adding those before I start listening on my, listening for requests and responses. Because after we've done that listen call, we can't add any more request handlers or notification handlers. Um, and so that was one way of doing that. And it's a way of saying, hey, I'm not directly interfacing with it's a way of saying I'm not directly interfacing with that LS client. I'm just declaring these are things that I would want to provide to the LS. These are services that I can handle. Another thing that Angelo, you and I were on a call and we were talking about was then you could start having these smaller packages that are contributing to LS methods. That also export, hey, this is my JSON schema for the messages that I work with, and we could use something like Zod or something like that to generate JSON schema off of TypeScript types, and we could have it as a build step. And then we could contribute, you could pull all those individual packages together and create hot. Now I've got a big JSON schema of everything that we have added to language server protocol, and build a nice little, build a nice little JSON schema that we can use for other things like code gen inside of editors that need to interface with LS. Oh, go ahead.
I would make that an absolute requirement, to be honest, if we're gonna
Oh,
go down this route. And the reason
yeah.
why I say that is because if we don't do that, no, we're just not gonna do it. And it's gonna get really messy if there's no documentation what's hooking into this right now. Like we kind of did that wrongly already with the AI context. Like we put the handlers in the wrong place, and Tomas was right to point that out. So like there's got to be some type of organization if we're going to be adding like, a
Yep.
bunch of extra methods, especially per plugin, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that we could even do this on the level of an LS contribution actually could create a type of, hey, you're actually typing out your return values, or essentially not your return values, but your object. These are the notifications, this is the handler, this is what it takes in. And we could actually do a lot of our generation there if we wanted to. So it's like at a centralized point. So yeah, there's some things here. Lena, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, so like one thing that we need to think about, that this notification and request do not clash, because we had an issue like when we registered a handler for the same notification, like in many places, and just like the last handler registered just overall the
Absolutely.
the
And
original
that's
one got like weird bugs, and yeah.
right. And that's absolutely the reason why I wanted to go with this sort of contribution method instead of having a direct access to the client, because we can put whatever we want in our sort of setup function for these things. So we could do things where it's like, hey, a notification isn't just direct calling the handler. We can have a nice little wrapper that says, hey, we make sure that we never expose an exception or an error to the core system. We do something where it's say, hey, we're dealing with a request. You're never going to get back an exception, or you're always going to get back a result type. So we can do whatever we want with that, with this piece. We can also do things like, hey, you set these notifications. We'll just keep track of what notifications we've set up, and we can start going, hey, I see a duplicate. This could be a crash early, which is probably fine for us, because that would be caught right away inside of integration testing, or just try to fire up as soon as you try to fire up the language server, you'd get a nice little message, hey, this has been registered, twice, or, we could essentially, keep a track of, hey, here's all the things where you've got duplicates, and have a nice little like debug report right at the very beginning going, hey, this is where you're, wrong. One thing we could also do with this is have something like a guaranteed prefix where, each time you're, setting, hey, I'm an LS contribution provider, you could return a prefix along with it and say, hey, my name is DuoChat. So as a result, we're going to, prefix your method name to sort of namespace it. So there's a lot of things that we can do here. And we sort of, this is the goal here, is to sort of let's get ideas going. But that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to do something like this, because it avoids the issue of I've registered the same thing over and over, or there's conflicts, because we should be able to tell that there's conflicts if we follow this pattern. Yeah. If there's any other questions, feel free to cut me off. So that's sort of the idea here, is could we have something that is in, we provide LS notifications and requests in a way that bypasses the need for sort of the parallel backdoor side messaging system that I've created with the message bus, and the message bus working with extensions, or the editor message bus. And the reason for that is, the reason I don't love that is I'm like, there's already so much work that's been put into libraries for our JSON RPC stuff that, we have to essentially redo, maintain all the same kind of things over in this land. But then it makes it even more complicated on the editor side. So I've now worked with a few people who have been like, either in JetBrains or on Visual Studio, or in like Eclipse, who are saying, okay, well, we need to integrate with the language servers, Webview stuff. And now I actually have to have almost like this parallel side thing that I have to set up where everything comes through, $, GitLab, Webview notification. But then I either have like a big giant switch statement of saying I switch on a whole bunch of individual types, and then I have my own handlers, or I have to create some system where I'm, dynamically, registering and finding handlers at runtime, which is what I'm doing in the Visual Studio world. But it may be really nice to just be able to say, hey, these are just normal JSON RPC pieces, and so as a result, we get all the normal tooling that we would have picked with our JSON RPC library. So that's one of the ideas there, is that can we lean into something that we already sort of have, but and not have to change too much. The second proposal, I'm going to jump to this, but feel free to ask questions or jump back to things. I have a proposal. It's called deprecate WebView plugins. Deprecate is a strong word here. I think that we can still support WebView plugins, but the idea is that maybe we favor exposing all the WebView communication. And Frederick's like, what do you mean deprecate? No, Frederick, go ahead.
That wasn't exactly my question, but like I raised just before you showed this, and it's kind of related, so good. But it's more like to make the distinction. I am definitely not the best expert of all the JSON RPC processes currently, but I did wonder, like, how do you do you distinguish in your head you want to distinguish like plugin, message bus, and like inter plugin, right? Because the plugin terminology is kind of used for different contexts. So like as a implementer of dual workflow, when I hear plugin, I'm thinking controller, right? I'm thinking the controller of my application. And so the way we've been building currently is like, messaging from the app to the plugin, and then plugin, if needed, inter-package communication would use like JSON RPC to talk to other plugins, right? And like very recently, and it's currently merging, like we've been building like a layer around the app where we've added Pinya so that the message bus can get out of app and become like abstracted away. So in that sense, it's kind of a good timing, because there are only 2 lines that touches the notification system now. They're in their own file. So it was more of a like, I think that however we change the implementation wouldn't impact too much workflow from my understanding. So but so this is more like a setting up for my question. But my question then with all of this is like, so in a very like concrete term of like, as an owner of like an extension, what are the difference in the day-to-day of like how does the plugin talk to the app? So
yes. No difference. The biggest difference is you don't need a setup function anymore. Instead, we rely on the DI system. And that's the thing that I was worried about, because I started looking at, hey, I essentially have a system where you need a factory function that creates a setup function. That's the goal. I have a factory function that creates a function that then other things get injected into. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm just now having these layers of injection, and we're already talking about injection. Maybe we should just use lean into the DI, because it almost feels like there's 2 ways of doing things, and that already like has some alarm bells for me, because I'm going, we should definitely try to say there's one preferred path, and so let me show you some code, because that's kind of what I have down here, but I can actually walk through some code inside of Visual Studio Code, and because I was setting some of this up yesterday. Let's go back to. Oh man, there I go. There we go. Okay, yeah, I put it here. All right. So we don't. Let me get rid of some stuff that I was talking with Dennis before the call. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I really like the idea.
John, can can I please ask you to make the same stunt again
Yes, yes.
with
I'm
the
so
font
sorry.
size? Thank you.
Hey, and at least the hotkeys
Yeah.
work inside of.
Yeah,
And
great. Thank you.
I'll get rid of this, and we'll make this.
Oh, this is so pleasing for an old man. Thank you.
Are you using a Mac right now?
I am using a Mac.
What made you switch?
The M2 chip made me switch. No, it's tremendously faster than the Dell that GitLab. So I'm
So you had to switch to Mac in order to realize that, right?
yeah, I did. I
Okay.
switched to the Mac, and then so if I'm writing in the language server, if I'm not writing Visual Studio, I try to use the Mac now.
Okay.
And so I'm relearning. So I've used Linux all my life. For whatever reason, the command key is so confusing for me. Frederick's like, yes, it is. Because for me, my pinky is my hey, I'm going to do something, my control key. I'm so used to that. And so using my thumb for stuff is really weird. I feel like I'm like relearning like a musical instrument.
I wanna hijack this for 1 second because I really hate this as well. You can in Mac setting you can rebind your keys, your command key to be whatever you want. So Dennis, just show off.
Yes. Kinesis, and you do whatever you want with your keyboard.
Yeah.
This is so beyond the topic of this call, though.
Yes, but it had to be recorded for posterity.
Yes, we need to know. No, I've tried that, but I got worried about it. Like I was like, okay, am I going to be overwriting things that control is absolutely necessary for? Like I don't know the Mac enough to where am I missing out on hotkeys? And you're like, no, just map it to control. Okay, all right, this changes everything. So my brother Paul, this is the only we're getting way off course, but I'm gonna come back. He really likes the command key, and the reason is control. Command C is copy, and if you're in a terminal, control C is kill your program. So he's like, hey, it actually has some function there, and I'm like, yeah, that's the only function it has. But anyways, it's all those Vim users out there who really like it. Okay. Let's go. So one thing that I would like to do, because I think everyone sort of has, there's been a lot of friction, and it's strange. It's really strange to have two projects inside of a single package. And this happens with Webviews. With like Webview, do a chat, Webview, do a workflow. We have a source directory, and then we have this app plugin and contract. And I'm going, okay, this works, but it's also strange because we're like our package JSON is cluttered with both like where do I put my front end dependencies, where do I put my back end dependencies? It's not clean. We're not really using npm the way that I would say is the right node, the right way we're using it. So how can we split those out in a nice clean way? And I think the right way is to go, I have a Webview project that all it does is it says I have a nice build. I can build to the directory that I need to. My package JSON is only with front end dependencies, but then I have a main.ts in my package.json so that it can be imported, and I get messages for inbound and outbound just for the web view. This is not communicating with the extension. It's just communicating to the front end. So the front end is declaring, here's how you talk to me. And then you also export what your WebView ID is. We could also extend WebView ID to also include like your message as well, your actual message map, so that you could just be passing around do a chat WebView ID, and we could automatically assume what messages are there. Very TypeScripty, auto helper type stuff. Okay. So then you have a WebView service project. This is essentially your controllers, Frederick. This is sort of like, this is my server for my WebView. And your server now works just as a normal service in the language server. So you would essentially have something that could be.
Is this in the node folder, like in the source directory?
Well, that's where I have it right now. It could be, but I prefer everything be in packages. because then your
I was about to get excited that you wanted to put in the source directory because that's what I would like, but
well, so the idea here is that if you had something that needed to be shared across different services that happen to be in packages, it would definitely make sense to put it up there. But if this is
yeah.
if this is a root level service that nothing ever relies on, but just needs to essentially start up and run, then
Yeah.
you could put that inside of, the node package. You could put it inside of common, and it would be,
I feel like that's what we should do. Like because Lena is gonna run into the thing where we need to share stuff with the AI context manager, like we were talking about, right?
Mhm,
I
mhm.
think for now, like an iterative approach would be like if Lena is migrating the language server to the language server, right?
Right.
So for all the back end stuff, we put it in its own, maybe even create like under source common, call it like, I don't know, something controllers or whatever, right? Plugin controllers or whatever. And then that's where the backend logic goes for now.
So,
And then eventually we migrate, when we start migrating stuff to packages, that's what I think the process should be. So like we at least have the organizational stuff, like you said, and then make sure you're only exporting stuff like an index.ts, and we can set up ESLint rules for that. And then we can tackle moving stuff to packages because, like you said, when we if we move AI Context Manager to its own package, it's going to be a crap load of work, right? But we can do it iteratively. I think we should move it to packages. Don't get me wrong.
yeah.
I agree.
I mean, I really think that AI context could be moved to packages, and it probably only take about, less than an hour. And the reason I say that is because, and we wouldn't have to change anything, because I think that you would just split up between that root level
Yeah,
AI
yeah, I know
manager.
what you were saying,
Yeah,
the manager and the providers. I just don't
yeah,
like the pattern and the separation of that. Like, if anything, it would be like, providers package and then like the business logic package. But like, even that is a little confusing. So, um, that's what I'm saying. Like, until we figure out like the design of that before we go down that route, like
yeah,
maybe it makes sense as a first iteration to just create the back end stuff
yeah.
and the
And
existing back end.
And the nice thing about this is that you could absolutely do that, because your package now contains, you're going to still want to have a front end package. Your front end contains your view app as well as your sort of like contract for messages, and then your actual like, hey, I need to communicate with I need to communicate with that front end. That is just a dependency that you just inject into whatever service you want.
Yeah.
So and Frederick, I see you thinking. So let me talk about this DuoChat WebView service, how you would set this up first, and then we'll talk about some follow-ups. So yeah, so let's say I was recreating DuoChat with wanting this to be a service that's DI injected, rather than needing the whole setup function, plugin architecture, stuff like that. So I create a class. It implements an LS contribution provider because I want to be able to communicate with the language server. I then ask for two things from VI. I ask for an LS message publisher, and the idea behind this is that we could have, it's a smaller form of the connection that only has send notification, send request.
This is so much nicer than the previous having worked with the other one. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's nice not having a setup function and needing to have this like sort of chain of
Like pace it,
things.
pass it down, and all that
Yeah.
stuff. That's really annoying.
And because we already needed to do something where, oh, well, we need to get these other services from DI anyways. So we're kind of doing that at the root level of our
And there's a
setup.
bunch of
So,
duplication.
so now we can just say, I need a constructor that gives me an LS message publisher. I now need a WebView connection provider. We could always abstract this further and just say, hey, give me a Duo chat, WebView connection. But that'd be something we'd have to, provide to the DI. But this would be something that would just be provided by default by, the WebView package to DI. You can get a WebView connection provider.
But does
now,
does DI allow us to even do this though? Because when we need these dependencies like in an iterative way,
No, so this is already in. I've already got this running.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
and the one thing that we would need if we wanted to do the LS contribution provider. So technically, the LS contribution provider isn't done because it needs some way of requesting from DI, hey, give me all LS contributions. We currently don't have that where we can say, give me an array of everything that has been registered of this type. Now, if we
Yeah.
didn't want to go down this path, we could always go something like we have an LS contribution registry. Now, that is like a singleton object that then each service could then go, hey, I know at my constructor time, I need to go register to the, call this method on the registry to register stuff. I don't
Okay.
love that approach because it feels like the opposite of DI.
Yeah.
But that's something we could absolutely do. Um,
Okay.
and but I'd rather look into DI to see, can we do something where give me all everything that supplies this interface, this interface ID, and I could get an array of things back. Um, um, but yeah, all the WebView stuff actually works right now. I've got an MR open. And well, what we do right now is then go like, let's go Webview connection provider, get connection of DuoChat Webview ID. If we didn't want to type this right now, you'd get this, const, let's say DuoChat equals Webview connection provider dot get connection DuoChat Webview ID. Now, the nice thing about that is I now already have DuoChat dot, on instance connected. I can go, let's grab all this stuff. Yeah, great. Oh man. Yeah. Okay.
Nice. And then, so for the extension, where is that? Where are we gonna get that? Like,
So if you want to yeah, hopefully this explains how you would work with WebViews, because anyone who's worked with this, you get the exact same API at this point. And that's really cool because you can do this from anywhere. So what's really nice is that I can now communicate with DuoChat in one service, but also communicate with DuoChat in another service that's kind of unrelated and decoupled.
yeah.
We could also, if you had some weird scenario, I was talking with Dennis about this. Is this good? I don't know. It depends on the situation. But I could also say, hey, I need workflow as well. And I'll get Webview connection provider, get connection, and do this. And now I need to broadcast something to both.
I mean, we'll definitely need to do that. Like if, like, for instance, we have multiple apps and someone changes their auth token and you need to change the user on all the UI at once, you can.
Yep.
That's
Yep. So I got another thing to show you about that too, because I think this is really cool. But yes, I'll get into that in 1 second. So that's how we would communicate with. You need the Webview connection provider. That gives you everything to communicate with WebViews, and you're good to go. Now, how do you communicate with editors? If you want to communicate with an editor, one is through the contribution stuff. This is about how do I handle notifications and requests. I'm setting up handlers for things that are incoming to the language server from an editor. If I want to send things, we would give something like, hey, you get a nice little message publisher, and a message publisher allows you to send notifications and send requests. Now, the idea behind wrapping the general connection with something like a message publisher and providing our own is so that we can inside of send notification, we could, or better case is something like on send request, we can do some general error handling and things before
the
we just
schema
send
stuff and the.
and we could also do something where it's like send, when we go send requests, right now, this is, let's say we were sending some requests. Whoops. Oh my goodness. And then this is like, it has to be awaited, which is not great in a constructor. So let's just throw it into something else real quick.
I think you should, that's the best place to put like like instead of allowing someone to pass anything for send requests, it's like you supply a Zod schema.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and we can absolutely, create this so it doesn't have to be right now. It's typed the same way connection is, but we could type it however we want and make whatever requirements we want. Yeah,
that's what I think. Like if you are required to put a Zod schema as like as part of it, then
Mhm.
as part of runtime, we can create like a little open API doc that calls in runtime all these
Mhm.
methods and figure out all the requests and then just map it out like that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and another thing, and so this starts to start breaking out that, that big giant message map that had to happen before, into, hey, we have, the front end declares this is how you talk to me. And then essentially individual services would declare, here's how I talk to, the extensions, or here's, and we can create multiple. Now, I mean, another thing we can do with something like this contribution pattern is if we see a notification, we could absolutely. So, Lena, to one of the things to your point is we could, if we wanted to handle multiple handlers for a particular type, we could totally do it this way. Where if we get a notification of like, hey, users changed or they've changed their workspace. We don't have to now have a single point where that's handled if we didn't want it to go that way, because this is now, we're not directly calling the on notification. And instead we could say we supply our own handler that says, hey, let's delegate to the registered handlers, down the line. So this gives us a lot of flexibility here. But then so on here, right now, like a response is a promise of unknown. Let's async this. But we could actually say, hey, we know that this thing, we could write something to say, hey, we know this will never throw an exception. Instead, you will always get a result object if we wanted to do something like that, because we were worried about, hey, if this result, I'm thinking about fault tolerance kind of stuff, where it's like, hey, if our exception gets thrown past this point, is there a possibility that we break the language server?
Yes. And also just to add that, like, this is a really good point. Like as an implementer of like this pattern, there was a need for this because there was a lot of duplication. Like every request we needed to have our own handling, right? Like it's not as simple. Like it's not HTTP. That we can't like build something built in. It was like every time.
Yep.
Try catch, send. Like we had like a general channel. It's like a workflow error, and anything that goes wrong goes through there. And we have like a pattern, but. And that will also be something we implement like in a more generic way, where it's like if it fails, you send this notification to the app. It's like a general channel for error messaging, and then the front end has to have at least one way of handling that. That's generic, right? So any error that comes in, you can handle it however you want on the client side. So I like that.
Yep. And that's kind of the goal, is that you could then, it's easy to hook into every handler, every error, and you don't need to have like this specialized thing every time you build a plugin. That's another thing I was really worried about, is like, okay, as we start building in new plugin features, it's going to be very top down, like, and this kind of creates a little more composability maybe. So another thing that I was going to bring up, that this kind of changed to having a whole bunch of more like services rather than that are provided by the DI, is that we can now create these like global things. Like Angela, you were talking about, what if a user changes and we want to just notify every Webview, regardless of who you are, that the user's changed. What we had to do today was either say, well, this is important enough to put inside the Webview runtime, like we actually have to put this inside of the core Webview service, which is what we did for theming. Or we would have to, every one of the plugins would have to take in like an authentication service, subscribe to changes, and then push their own, events down. If we didn't want to do either one of those things, and we went through this kind of system, we can directly ask for the Webview message bus, or the Webview runtime message bus. This is how the Webview system works in general. It's all events that run, and the individual services connect into those events to do their work. So we can say something like, I created a service inside of packages, lib Webview theme. I now have a new service called the Webview theme broadcast service. This is an injectable service. DI sets it up, and calls the constructor at startup time, and what we do is we subscribe to the Webview runtime message bus to say if the Webview has connected, then we'll get an address for that Webview back, and we can now publish the current theme to that Webview as a traditional plugin notification, just like we're doing today, but is now a service that doesn't need to live inside of the core runtime Webviews.
Yeah, that's nice.
And so the same thing with like, and so this is the exact same logic that we had in our, in our Webview runtime. Now it's just a nice little side service that we can just, say, hey, you can coordinate with the Webview runtime message bus however you want. And
This is much better. Like we got to ship this yesterday. So
yeah. So
I'm all in favor of just merge it, like you getting a POC, merging it, and then I think a great plan would be like have Lena use this pattern.
Yeah.
I don't
So
know.
the one thing that we would need in order to get the to sort of remove the plugin requirement, like doing the thing that we're doing today.
Yeah.
So like I've got the WebView communication side of things up and running. That was pretty straightforward. And I have an MR open for that. But I think that I'll go back over to my proposals. I think this proposal is the one that probably needs the most thought put into it. I really like the pattern, but I kind of want to make sure that we're, one, is this cool with everybody? And then two, is this how we would want to interface with something like this, where the prerequisite, if we wanted to do this, is that we have to update DI to make sure that we can get an array of items back, which will help not only this, but also your stuff, Angelo, where you have like the AI context manager, and AI context manager has these individual providers, and each provider, we really just want to ask DI, give me an array of providers. We don't want to have to ask for each individual one.
I'm sure that's possible. Like if you get Tomas to look at it.
I think it's just like we just need to. I haven't read through all the DI codes, so I don't know what.
So in this case, how are you actually calling like so is handler binding it to the LS connection? Is that what's happening? When is this because you know how you have to like literally call send request to like bind that function to the LS connection object, right? So at what point are you doing that?
So these are data objects. So I'm not doing that currently. So I'm just trying to define the API. Like, how would someone define these things? How do you declare them? So this is an object that would get returned. And so the idea essentially is, and we'll write some pseudocode, expect to get a ton of, let's just call it setup ls. We have a nice little setup function already. Essentially, what we would need to do, and let's say we get a container.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess you just iterate through all of them. That's
you
why
would go
need the array, is you would go through the array and just call the.
Yes, exactly. So you would say something like, hey, give me all my, contributions equals container.
I really don't like contributions name, by the way. Like
I'm fine with anything. I think I'm going off of Visual Studio or VS Code.
I would love like dependencies or something like more explicit. Like contributions to me is very vague, but
I'm totally fine with changing that. I have no. I think that anyone I've talked, like when I talk to someone who's worked on the VS Code extension, and I say that, they kind of go, "Oh, I kind of get it," So I have no stake in the naming game. I think dependencies is weird just because we already have a thing called like dependency injection. That's also sort of vague. We could just call it extensions, ls extension.
Well, I'm just talking about like the naming of contribution across the board, but
yeah. So what you would end up doing is something like ls. What did we call this? Oh, I'm in the theme step. Let me go back out there so I can.
Yeah, but you would basically get the container, or sorry, not the container. Yeah,
I have the container, and I would say I need the ls contributions. Let's just call it that. And then let's say, this would be an array. An array of things. I would loop over each one, and at the same time, I have a connection.
Yeah,
you know,
and then
from
you
the
call
from
the connection set method.
notification. You know, if I so I would essentially go, okay, time to loop through everything. For each let.
So I would make that. I would make the interface you have there an array then of handlers, not a object. So if you go back to your
Go back to here.
proposal, I would make that an array versus an object.
So, but we need the name. So yes, we could do it either way. Yes, either this name is
Like an array of objects, basically.
well, the nice thing about having it like this is that we can then type out, like we can actually say, hey, TypeScript, this is what your object
Yeah.
is. Um,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, either way, at the end of the day, when you're working it with it here, you want it in an array. Like because this is going to end up being an object and it's an array of objects. And so we'd end up saying like, object.keys,
Yeah.
and grab all the things from there.
So I would do like I would make sure we start with Zod if we're gonna do this, and
Yeah.
we don't have to set up like all the fancy stuff for API, but at least like ensure that when people are creating this, we just start with a typed schema and just sit that way. I think that'll set us up for.
And so I think a really nice thing to come off of this, if this is something that, hey, we're kind of cool, we're sort of really interested in exploring this more, I would say something that an issue that comes off of this is let's figure out how we can do schema generation and figure out a pattern for that, because we sort of want schema generation and then we want to go, okay, now the pattern is we're building this and schema generation comes for free. Like we can just kind of
Well, you could
iterate
do
on.
you could do something like you could do theoretically something like one method. So it's implementing an interface, right? So you could have a method that's like schema, like
Mhm.
And that schema has to implement a Zod object, like
Mhm.
has to implement a Zod object. Then the get contribution calls that method maybe, and you keep that as like a non-public method of the LS contribution provider.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm thinking like maybe it'd be beneficial to define the schema somewhere
Mhm.
separately,
Mhm.
and then the contribution itself somehow uses that.
And we can absolutely do that. So we could do something where it's an LS contribution of a particular type. And that contribution, that type is sort of my object where it says, hey, I know what this should be called, what its handler, like what we expect the payload to be. And if it's a request, like we expect what the payload to be, we expect what the response to be. And the nice thing about it is that if you have a payload, then you could go and we could pass in a validator, to go, hey, if the payload didn't come back and didn't satisfy the validator, well, we're just going, if it's a notification.
That would be super nice for every person that's implementing stuff, is like we basically provide validation out of the box for every endpoint.
Yep.
So if someone goes to implement it and we just let them know, hey, this is not correct.
Yeah, no. And then we can have really nice logging messages that are we're not re-implementing validation everywhere we go, because I think we're starting to do that a little bit in the plugins where it's like, I have to do this, we hopefully, especially with editors, I think the editors are starting to have to do a lot of that work. But it'd be really nice if we said, we have a nice uniform error that we can provide both to users, but also to editors to say, hey, you're sending something, this is not correct. We expected this. And then it's really easy for someone who's integrating to go, oh, well, I know how to fix that, because I'm getting a error message.
I want to jump in real quick because I will have to go real soon. But before I had a question, but I saw Lena had also had a question. So I don't know if it's still relevant, but Lena, if you want to go before, please do.
No, I'm fine. Go on.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I had only one. I have two questions. The first one is when we talk about contribution, just so that I'm really clear, because I also don't like the name, but I don't know Visual Studio, so maybe that's why. But we're talking about communication from editor to language server, right? Yes. Or vice versa. So yeah, maybe it could be very simple. It could literally be like ID message, right? Like it could be something.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. Yeah, because
But-
really all we're doing here is we're defining handlers for messages coming from a client, a language server client. So that's an editor to the language server.
Perfect. Okay. And
yeah.
so my other question and like slash thought is that a reality as like a plugin implementer again. I think one of the things that we've been working toward is that we have started the workflow as like an IDE experience, right? And
Mhm.
it has always been on top of our mind that whatever we build is also going to eventually live on GitLab.com. And so the separation of concern between client and language server specific implementation of like controllers, schema, TypeScript, even, like we have to slowly move away from that, from everything that is client side. And so whatever proposal we move, because we were saying like the client defined the messaging system, as long as that there's a way for us to not have anything inside like the view component care about this, then we don't have like that. Then this is perfect, because that was one of the things that's been really hard, right? It's like index.ts, like, okay, well, should this be a JS file because we mount the app, but like we're also mapping the message bus, right? And so the more we can get that out, then the better, because we can have like, here's like the language server contract, and then there's an app, and it's JavaScript and Vue, and it just does its thing. But there's a middle ground that's specific to the language server. And if tomorrow morning we pull that out and we put that on, we just don't pull that file, and it should kind of work as is, right?
And you solve this with a Pinya store right now, right?
Yes. And there might be other ways. The Pinya stuff did make some level of sense, because now we have our own like messaging for that goes between Vue application and then global logic and messaging, and then we have an implementer that's just like mapping actions to the message bus. And in time, the next step, it would be something like, okay, well, our GraphQL queries should be the same. So like when you send that message, you tie it into like a specific query, and then you go, if we implement that through like in the LSP with like the message bus, and then it hits like a package, then it's fine. And then on web, it sends the query, and then you run GQL or something, right? And then it comes back, and then you can like kind of avoid having to re-implement the whole system. So
I think that's perfect. And we should not be, really, TypeScript is something that you can absolutely bypass. So, we should be, and I think that's and I think that'd actually be very helpful for y'all to kind of say, all right, my WebView is more, I'm starting to move away from that WebView needing to be so integrated into the language server in general, especially with like the package setup that we have right now, where it's like the app has to sit next.
He froze.
Yeah, okay. I was about to ask. I was like, is it me? Is it him? Is it everyone?
Messages for working with the language server. Did I
you froze for a second.
Froze for like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh man. So I really like what you were saying about let's have an app being a WebView being a package. It has a really slim layer that says these are my messages. It says, I really like the idea of I've got a store or something that is essentially my domain boundary between, all right, I'm working with language server or some other integration, these are essentially just action handlers that then update the store. And then I have my application, my front end view logic, and if we write things that way, then we won't have these like tightly coupled pieces that can be really easily moved around. So
that's perfect. And I think like, we've talked about this before, and I'm more than open to like, once we have something a bit more solidified, like, okay, if this star pattern is something we want to move forward, then it's something we can document, but it's also something that could be its own package, right? Like we could definitely have like, this is a pattern where like you build your application, and you make sure that like, if you want to have this both in IDE and web, this is kind of how you would do it. You can use this package, and it stores and actions, right? And it would abstract this even further. But no, I liked everything, honestly. So I'm gonna read the proposal more in details, and I'll make sure to keep I really have to go, but thanks, John, and I will let you all continue.
Yeah. Thanks, Frederick. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, everybody. I know we're way over time. I am, of course, I'm happy to stay. I don't think I've got anything right now, other than I think it was the all hands meeting. So
Yeah, but I'm gonna go to the later one for that.
I'm gonna go to the later one as well. So
But Lena's probably missing it, so
I'm
No,
sorry.
it's fine. I've missed it already. I've watched the recording. Can I ask a question now?
Absolutely, please do.
So like I like the proposal. Like it's much better than the plugin, so we don't have to learn this new pattern with the plugin and everything. But the product is will probably want to do a chat migrated. Like we'll have a plan to migrate the chat in the next milestone
Yes.
and doing the
Yes.
spike, and it's like worked out well and like everything. So before this we figure this out and discuss it and settle the pattern, like what as I understand, this part will replace the communication between the extension and the language server and
Yes.
the part where the Webview communicates with what? So there is no plugin. So Webview doesn't
Oh
communicate
yeah.
the
Yeah.
plugin. It's okay, never mind. So this part doesn't go away. So the Webview like kind of chat
So
control communication stays the same, pretty much the same.
yes.
So it's like
Yes.
thinking how much effort, like after we, like if we implement the chat with the current approach, like we would need to replace the layer, like where the extension communicates with the language server. And it
Yes,
would
there will be two things that need to change. So if we one thing is I don't expect to phase out plugins like anytime really soon. Like if we even if we went through this and we got it all implemented, I think we should just say, all right, usage of plugins is pretty much deprecated. Don't use it, but it'll still be supported until we start moving everything off of it. But once we move how to move everything off of it, I think is two pieces. One is let's say if I went to Webview do a chat. Really, the core place that would change is inside of our, index.ts of WebView Duo Chat source plugin index.ts. And so what we do here is we define the plugin factory, which eventually returns a plugin, which is really the setup function. That's the most important piece. And the setup function, we inject our WebView and extension. Instead, now these things can be provided as services that can just be provided in a normal, class like we're doing everywhere else. Um, so the only thing that would really need to change is instead of getting, really just this file, and this is like 47 lines, because all this other stuff will probably stay exactly the same. We will still require our platform manager. We'll still go GitLab platform manager from chat. We'll still listen for the WebView on instance connected, and we'll create a controller for each one of those. This piece probably wouldn't happen here. Instead, it would happen in that kind of either ls extension or ls contributes, whatever we end up wanting to call it, that would happen there, which would probably still be in this new class that we'd create. So it's all still co-located. And then we'd still, return and dispose where, we control it. We dispose the controller, and we probably only dispose the new prompt subscription if the entire class were to be disposed of. Because that's another thing we should probably think about with the DI. So like if the DI itself gets disposed, does it keep track of everything that's disposable and try to dispose it? That should be something that we should do. We don't probably have to. We're in JavaScript. We can just close down a process and all the memory gets freed and we're fine. But yeah, so really the migration over should be very, very minimal. The one thing that would need to take place is right now we have an extension notification for new prompt. And I know that, Lynn, I think you added things for like send message and
there was another one.
it's like a
But
snippet, like something like there's like a code snippet we need to paste it in. I can't remember what that was. So both of those would need to now. So right now we're calling extension on notification, but these would be like extension.send notification or send request. Like we have our send request happening inside of the GitLab chat controller, where let me. Wherever that is. Yeah, we have this get current file context. Let's jump into that. That is the extension message bus send request, get current file context. So both of these things right now, like all those, go over the method GitLab. I'm gonna,
Plugin.
yeah,
Plugin
Webview notification or plugin notification. That's right, plugin notification. Or in this one, it'd be plugin request.
Mhm.
Okay, so eventually, if we continue to go as long as we're using the plugin system, this will always go over this. That's just the way this will work. But if we decide to go with the pattern of like the ls contributes or ls extensions or something like that, then it would probably be something like this. Yeah. So either this or we say this is root level. We might say, hey, we might need to be able to get current file context, and we want to share that across, more than just duo chat. Like other things might need to get current file context as well. This is why like the send message really makes sense as something like this, or however we want to do that. But the idea is that, are we sending a duo chat message to the extension, or are we just sending a generic GitLab message? This is something that we want to have a notification for. So this now, it would allow for a little more granularity where not everything is a plugin specific notification. It could be more generic than that. But yeah, so because of that, because we're moving from, hey, this would be plugin requests to now something like, duo chat. Let's just call this get current file context. Let's just say it was this for right now. We would need to make updates on the editor side to essentially say, let's listen for this and use the handler where we originally had our big switch statement. Let's use our handler there and put it for this instead. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah.
I will just like mention that like once we settle this pattern, it will take like some migration. There would be some migration,
Yes.
but it's like just a small.
And I expect it to. So I don't want to, slow anyone down. I think that's one of the reasons why I would definitely still recommend that, like right now, I know, Lena, you're working right now on how do I move things to from VS Code to the language server. And we were talking, and I know that we were just talking about maybe we need to just make a, Webview Duo Chat V2 and just copy everything over. And that might be a really, good idea for right now. I'm not sure. I think right now we probably still go down the path of using this sort of like plugin factory, return a plugin, send it to where we need, things like that, with the intention that there will eventually be a time to migrate off of this, but it shouldn't be really, it really should not be painful to migrate.
Why wouldn't we just try going down the new route and just trying it?
I think it's just that we definitely need the DI change. We definitely need the how do we register extension notifications and extensions. I'm not opposed to doing it. I just know that if the expectation, I don't want Lena to go, wait a minute, the thing that I'm doing already, I'm under pressure to get something out, out the door, and now I'm waiting on these other dependencies, because as soon as we tell, like even if we tell product that, hey, there's these dependencies that happen to have beforehand, even if we said, I think we can knock this out in a week, they're going to say, this is probably a 3-week, change. They don't like having like these layers of dependencies that have to come before something comes in. So
Label as a prereq.
yeah. So it's like I would like to try to do this as like, can this be more of like a tech debt thing? And then, because my goal is, could I go in and make these changes and then even go in and make the changes for Duo Chat and Duo Workflow, which I should be able to. Like, if I look at Duo Workflow, and I look at right now, we have like source, common, plugin type, I haven't looked at Duo Workflow almost at all, other than like a few MRs, but typically around just straight front end stuff. So I haven't looked at this, but if I look at like index.ts, my thought is, oh, they have a plugin factory just like this. I know that these would need to be provided by DI. I know that these, where they get WebView and extension, would now just be other services that they inject rather than needing a setup function. Extension, anything that does like extension would now need to be, and the really interesting thing here is they have extension, but I don't see it being used anywhere else, which makes it really, really easy for me, because I know that we're not going to need to, we're only going to have this top level space where I need to say, all right, I need to register an event handler here. And then Webview is really easy because that's just a, now that's just a service that I just get the Webview connection, and then I can just call, get me that connection with this Webview ID. So yeah, so I think it'd be really easy to migrate to a point where it's like, I would probably want to, I'll take that on because I know that, you know, no one loves to go, wait, I just figured this out. I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to have to do it again. So I totally get that. And then I think that initially we probably don't even have to do the whole, because even though I think it's a good idea in the long run, we don't have to split out the application into, what's my app versus my plugin. You know, I've got my common, you know, like they've got this like nice little like, you know, it's sort of like, okay, I think, you know, down the line, probably the first one we do it with is like Duo Chat, and I can go, and it should be as easy as going, all right, my plugin is now, I have no plugin. All of this just moves underneath source. Everything in app just moves into a different package, you know?
So how, Lena, how are you gonna do all the AI context management stuff?
Like now, as like I was doing like this exploration, I moved all the types to the package and just and provided the instance of the AI context manager to the plugin, and then plugin passes it down to the controller, and like we wrap the AI manager instead of sending notifications from the extension to the language server. I have a wrapper that will delegate to the AI context manager from the language server.
I just don't like that. I don't like it being so separate.
I mean, separate like,
It's just like the whole thing is already pretty complex, and it just makes it more complex than it needs to be. I don't know if I like that pattern, but I guess you have to migrate it.
So are you really opposed to, because I really like this being like, this is what people deal with, you know, this is the API, is AI.
Ideally it's just one package. Like AI context management is under one package. That's the ideal world, but we can't do that because it's touching so many other things, and in order to do that, we have to figure out some way of moving it out, right? I'm talking about also the providers. I don't want to like have providers in one.
Oh, I think you totally need providers. You totally need them. So you should really have packages like this. I totally agree with this. You should have live AI context management.
A package for each provider? Hell no.
Yes, absolutely. Because you want each
That's
provider.
crazy. You're gonna have like 10,000 different packages.
That's okay.
No.
It's totally okay because each package
that's why
explicitly declares its dependencies. That's why it's so important, because you're saying I only need this. You know?
This is like some NX type stuff. I don't want to do that. That's
no, it's really good. It's really, really good. It's not NX because you're not doing like, it's not the tooling that's the problem. No, but I totally agree.
Folders, and then every time you want to run unit tests, you have to run it for each one of those packages. Like that's just going to be that's too much.
You have to do it already. You already have to do that.
I know. I don't want to do that even more.
No, but it's still the same. It's not anything different.
And then if you want to do the compilation watch script for any one of the AI context providers specifically to make sure it compiles, then you have to like make sure you pass that in the command line argument. Like that's just too much for each provider. That's just our tooling is our monorepo tooling is
so difficult.
Our monorepo, what I'm saying is I don't mind doing it, but right now not under the current monorepo tooling. Definitely not.
But you could absolutely put all of your providers right now under your common. If you were like, I don't want to change this right now, and still move all of the, because like AI Context Manager right now, see, this is the other thing, is that AI Context Manager requires these providers. But that's not really what AI Context Manager needs. It needs to know I need an array of providers. I don't need to
Yeah, I know.
know
I'm
about
not. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it should be its own. The whole thing should be its own package, in my opinion. Just one place that you go for AI context management. Um, and if the provider gets so complex, then it needs its own package, maybe. But these like providers are very small. So
Sure,
and
sure.
also
No,
like
no. And so that's where I'm kind of saying if right now, if we weren't wanting to do that and we didn't, things hadn't been migrated out and you still needed AI context manager, because like, so what Lena's saying is that I had to extract all the types. And Angela, what you're saying is going, but I might have to change the API and now I have to
we're gonna
go,
change. Yeah, we're
I have to
gonna
change
definitely.
types. I have to
We're
go,
literally in the next couple of weeks. We're gonna change
yes.
the types and stuff like that.
So what I'm saying is it really makes sense. Can AI context manager live in a package? And so the providers are defined inside of common where they are now.
That's the thing. I don't like it being like in its own package, and then anybody else so like when co-creation team needs to go in, they're gonna be like, oh well, why is this package here? And why is this? Why do I have to change this here? And it's like there's not like a it's not like a to me it's gonna seem very disorganized. It's in moving the types to another package is already like adding to the disorganization. So that's why I was saying like um
Yeah, I
go
guess,
with
but I
the
also feel like
packages, if we go
you,
with a packages approach, like it needs to be like then it becomes all over the code base versus like it's in one area right now and the mental load is like one area. When you spread that load across it, it needs to like actually be done, not just like half done here and half done there. Does that make sense? And like it just put it in your
yeah,
put in the shoes of a new developer, not like we know what's going on. I'm not talking about
right.
you.
Yeah, no, I get that too. I mean, the thing in my mind is I typically think about the API first. Like, how does a thing interface with it? And that's the thing that gets exported. That's how people interface with it. And so I do feel like if packages are going to need this context provider, then it's sort of like, okay, I need to sort of export that interface somewhere. Like that needs to be available. And then all the things behind it are because you've created a thing that is very extensible and it's extensible through these providers. But like all these providers are they're just AI. Yeah. So it's like it's not directly relying on OpenTab, local file dependency provider, issue context, merge request. It's really just saying I need providers. And so as a result, it like really does it says to me that this is something that's totally available to everybody. And
Right, but what I'm
concept
saying
of
is
how do
like
you
I wouldn't move this into its own package and then keep the providers under source. I would move it all in one go in one migration effort into one package, including the providers. Having it separate, it's just going to
yeah.
stay like that for months on end, and then we're going to have new developers from co-creation and
Do
whatnot.
you feel so right now we have things like the AI context management, we look at the providers, and right now it's very, I mean, I'm not sure what merge requests are, but everything seems very like it's local context. Your file system, open tabs.
Some of it relies on merge request relies on the the GitLab API, which is going to be moving to its own package.
But doesn't that concern you a little bit where you're going like, okay, now I have this concept of AI context management and it needs everything, as opposed to saying I have little, plugins
Well, that's why I'm
essentially.
saying like we really like if we're going to go down the packages approach, we should start moving different services to different packages. And
Well,
then
no, I absolutely agree with that.
lastly, we move the AI context.
But
That's the
yeah.
should
I
be
guess what I'm saying is I sort of see it as being like, okay, I look at AI context manager and what does it really need? It goes, I need, concepts of DI. I really don't need any of my
No,
providers.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying
Yeah.
like
But if I had something that was
I
live,
wouldn't do it for the sake of like all the new developers that I know are gonna like chat team is gonna need to be onboarded onto this stuff. Co-creation team is gonna need to be onboarded. So like they're just gonna complain
yeah.
like why are we going to a different package to modify X, Y, and Z? Like why do I have to do this? And I'm gonna be like, well, Like we can only migrate half of it because the rest of it is like entangled with the rest of the code. So
Yeah.
that's my issue with it. It's not like the actual. I completely agree with the approach. It's just
Yeah. Well, so if you were to do something like this, where you said, okay, we know that we're going to have so I'm going to go back to having the multiple packages thing for just a second. But if you had something where you ended up saying where I have, AI context providers, and you just went, hey, here is, GitLab issue AI context provider, uh, would this help from and the reason I say this is like, let's say GitLab issue, AI context provider. Because and we don't have this
you're gonna
today, but
have so many freaking packages if we do
but
provider per
but
package.
the nice thing about it then is I know that my GitLab issue AI context provider, it needs, and it has a direct dependency in my package JSON and everywhere else. I know that it has a dependency on a GitLab org API client.
Yeah, but that
I know
dependency
that.
is going to need to depend on other dependencies from source.
Well, no, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that let's say we've moved all the packages. So let's
Okay.
pretend everything's in a package.
Yeah.
And the reason and so what I'm kind of getting at here is, but then if I had another one where I go like, this is about open tab AI context provider. Uh, um, the idea is that OpenTab, it doesn't need those dependencies, so it has a really slim dependency tree, and we can kind of tell, when we're doing like MR.
I think that's fine, but our tooling is not sustainable for this. Like, and it like I don't think it's gonna. I think the issues are gonna grow. Like, we need to think about a real. I don't know if I'm convinced that npm is like the move for this many packages. Like,
So
we need
what?
a tool dedicated for.
So I
I
kind
just
of
don't
wonder
think.
what that means.
I just don't think
Yeah.
the npm devs themselves are actually investing like true effort into making the monorepo experience happen versus like the likes of PMPM, Turbo, other like dedicated monorepo
Yeah.
solutions. And then once we have like 100 plus packages, or like our command line doesn't support that. So it's going to be extra annoying to have like anytime I want to make a change to open tabs, I'm gonna have to go in with our current workflow and like put in the package name for that, and then run the command specifically for that, or like how you said, run like a build step. But then
Is this for testing? So right now we don't do any builds.
testing or compilation or
Oh, but compilation is just TypeScript. So it'd be the same. It's the same code base. TSC does everything normal, and nothing changes.
even the because I thought we have to use ESBuild to compile or that's for the view apps.
That's for the front ends. So if we put our front end somewhere else, and that's why I'm trying to split them out, is because so everything in packages right now is just TypeScript, and we use TSC for everything. So it's even though they're in separate packages, we import them with like the at GitLab org whatever whatever our package name is. It doesn't change compilation time because it's still just, hey, hey, we got node modules. And so everything gets up to here, like everything's GitLab org, and here's all of our node modules. So it's just like a normal
my
import.
thing is like, do you really think npm for this many packages is like a good solution?
I think it's the same as a file system.
Huh?
I think it's the same as a file system because it's just symlinks. So I would totally agree with you if the situation was we needed to publish each one of these things individually, and we needed to actually do like a release thing, and everything relies on different versions, and maybe we're relying on a local version here, but we're relying on the npm registry version over here. That's a nightmare, and I've had to do that with like NX and stuff, and I moved to NX because npm wasn't great for that. But if our goal is we're only ever dealing with one single, TypeScript, at the end of the day,
What about testing? I want to run tests specifically for GitLab issue AI provider.
Okay, so today if everything was in source directory, we have to run tests on either a globally or tell just, hey, let's just do it on
Yeah.
this file tree,
Yeah.
down. So we could still do that. Because right now the tests are run globally. We could say run the file tree of packages lib disposable. So we could still do that. Or we can now go because right now none of these have like test scripts on them. If I go look at lib WebView and I go to package JSON, there's no scripts because it's just TS. There's no build, there's no but we could, if we decided we want to do test, and let's say each one of these things has a different we use
So
just for something and we
is just resolving each package on the fly then?
yes.
It's already doing that?
Yes, it's already doing that.
How is it doing that?
Because we do this is unit integration. Yeah,
Like if
unit.
I write a unit test in a package like AI provider, right, and I import from GitLab API,
Yes.
it resolves it?
Yes.
How though? Through path aliasing and TSC, TS config?
No, because it's just a node module.
And then the node module symlink points to that folder?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So like, and I have to look to see what's happened here because I don't remember this being put in here. This is do a workflow, but I know that we could just say, hey, you're looking for anything under test, just like we're doing source browser, source comment, source node, source test. We could absolutely just go, and I thought this already existed because I'm pretty sure I know this was working. We can just say, hey, and you're looking at packages, anything you see in test, because when we import things, let's say I was in like lib. I've got to find something
Like
that's
1,000 TS configs though. That's also going to be annoying, right?
So the other option is you don't need the TS configs. You really don't, because
you still at least need a package JSON though, right?
you do need the package JSON, but that makes sense because we are declaring these are my dependencies. And I think that that's important because we can say, these are my local set of things that I'm needed. Like I need a WebView plugin, I need WebView transport and handler registry, and then so it allows us to then when we look at our package JSON, we can question, do we really need this? Do we see any circular dependencies? Because those are things where we go like maybe we're writing something wrong that we wouldn't know if we weren't if we didn't do the package JSON thing, So it's like it does help with a like understanding the topology of your dependencies. And I think it's really nice to say something like, hey, I've got let's say we're in AI context and I'm in my AI context open tab provider. And if you're importing something that's like GitLab, GraphQL API or something, and we're going, wait a minute, do we need this? Whereas we may not see that if it were just inside of a big, conglomerate of everything. It is more, there's effort there to like, oh, I gotta write another package JSON. But I think that that's like a temporary growing pain where once you start going, it's like, okay, this isn't too bad. And a lot of these, like one of the cool things about, one of the things that I'm doing, I'm actually going to be removing packages most likely, where I probably don't need, right now we have libwebview plugin. Probably that's just going to go underneath libwebview. The theme's probably going to stay. Transport's going to stay because I created different transports for this. I have a libwebview transport, and a JSON RPC transport, and a socket.io transport. And I didn't want to put them in the same place because I wanted to say, hey, JSON RPC is very specific to it needs
that dependency. Yeah.
It needs the VS Code language server types because you pass that in. But like socket needs socket.io. And needs events. And so like I can be very declarative about this is what it needs. Now, does it work in other ways? Absolutely. Does it work, will it work this way? Absolutely. It's one of those things where I do think that it's a bit of a, it can definitely go into a it's a opinion, it's what does Jeff Bridges say? And that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
it can feel like that. So I don't, I don't want to be like, I don't want to be dogmatic
I'm
about
not
it.
against it. I just want to like avoid, because like right now we're already doing we have a ton of stuff and cleanup work to do with the AI context stuff. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah, absolutely.
creating
And
another package for it is just gonna give
yeah,
us headwind right now.
yeah.
So, but I guess
Um,
Elena has to do that, which is
we would need it right now just because of the way plugins work. Once this stuff's done, you don't have to. We could put everything back in source, but it's going to take however long.
yeah. But then we're gonna have to move it back. So and then
Yeah, it's probably best to
another
try to.
MR, there's gonna be another
Yeah.
MR, take another 2 weeks because everybody's like, why are you copying code? Like we need to we need to
Right,
review this for 3 days.
right. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I'm not opposed to so I've talked with a bunch of people about our current package structure. I'm a recording. Anyone who's watching, you'll know that I don't love this giant, the whole bunch of packages. We have to prefix everything with what it is. This is a lib versus this is a web view.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm more of a fan of going, all right, let's at the top level say something like, all right, let's have a directory
Yeah, I would
called
prefer
web
that
views.
if we're gonna do
Uh,
just
you
like
know,
net packages, definitely.
because I would really just kind of go, I've got web views, and these are all going to be the same kind of structure. It's really easy to tell what it is. I don't need to prefix this in this like, web view thing.
Yeah.
Um, um, and underneath packages, I'm not opposed to saying let's have another subfolder of, different things. We know that we're going to be creating lots of these things. Let's create a subfolder. And then all you have to do to get that subfolder to work with NPM is to just add a new workspace. So like we can go packages slash let's say this was AI context provider. And then you said like this, then anything underneath there that has a package JSON would be
Yeah.
included. Now I think another thing you can do, I haven't tested this. I think you can do this.
Maybe,
And
yeah,
say
probably.
and just go recursively grab me everything that's a package JSON underneath this folder. Um, um, I think sometimes that's not great if you ended up having it wouldn't be great if you ended up having like node modules, get included. But I'm hoping that NPM knows to avoid, ignore node modules um, with like recursive.
That's what I don't know is like how much they've actually invested in.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't ever know. I'm typically in that like, and that
They
goes back to
just
it's like,
let's just say this, they just added ECMAScript support like out of the box.
yeah, yeah,
The last 2020
yeah,
node.
yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if I have. They move very, very slow.
They
I mean,
move very
they have
slow.
to because they have a lot to support. I mean, it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Hey, I'd love to move to I like Dino. I like Bun.
I would love to move something like Dino, but
Um, Dino 2 just came out. It's got great
it's
ways of like
amazing. Have you tried it?
I have. Well, you can create executable binaries like really quickly now. So like stuff we're doing here for the language server could be, done
I
without
think
the
Dino
need.
is great. Yeah, I think Dino
Yeah.
is.
I think one of the things I think is really cool about it is things like, oh, I don't have to set up all of this unit testing stuff. It like comes out of the box.
And ESLint, everything like it's.
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, is
But
it
we're
worth
gonna
it?
no, we're gonna get shot down so
Oh,
fast.
I know. And we're, I mean, it's if we had lots of time and some like time for some tech debt research type stuff, it's worth thinking about. But it's probably also something that, we'd have to start looking at because I know that like the VS Code extension does rely on some of the types that get exported from. So we actually do, we publish an NPM package as well as, the binaries. So we just need to, stuff that would be, um,
It's hard.
it's hard. It's hard. There's a lot of little like moving parts. Uh, but
But this is good. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm happy to help in any way, but
definitely. Well, and feel free. I mean, anyone to comment on the proposals, even if it's just a thumbs up, because I'll probably run it by Maverick and see if we can get
Yeah.
because I think so what I've kind of been tasked with for the last week is to sort of think about fault tolerance from a systems level. How can we sort of have like this fault tolerance by default? How can we have a way to onboard people by default? Like, can we just think about the topology of our language server and what optimizations we can make? And of course, I've been in the Webview side of things, so that's the first place I started. But the first thing that I went down the path of going, we all have plugins. Everything's a plugin. Like AI context is a plugin. I started rebuilding like AI context, the API as a plugin. And the way I had it set up is that I had this like sort of like runtime discoverable kind of thing where AI, let's say I had an AI context plugin, it would register with some central service essentially to say, I have the following capabilities, and they're all like indexed by name, and they have some type associated with them. Like, this is the messages that can be sent to me. These are the messages that can, that I can respond to, and these are the events that I broadcast to, a central event bus. And then I went, oh, well, then we'll have these other plugins. And so it was very much this giant plugin system that they all could communicate with each other, and everything was great, except that I was going, I'm bypassing the whole concept of the language that we've chosen, like, JavaScript in general, and it had this like runtime discoverable thing, which meant that every time you needed to do something, you had to go, that wasn't part of your own module or your own plugin. You had to go, all right, central plugin service, do you have this capability? Great, you do. I will request something from that capability. And so plugins would communicate like abstractly over this message bus. And the couple problems materialized. One, this is verbose. It's very, it's difficult. So you kind of try to start making shortcuts that aren't like super safe.
Yeah.
It's not very performant because you're not doing direct method calls anymore. Now you're doing everything communicates over a message bus, like every possible path. And um, and then the other piece that I didn't love about it was I can't think of it off the top of my head. But one thing I thought was nice about it was it treated like the extension wasn't something special. It was just a capability. So like you would have like your editor would essentially say, I register certain capabilities, same way it does with the language server today. I register, I ask for certain capabilities from the language server, and then it says, oh, I'll broadcast that to the rest of the systems involved in my thing. But I just sort of went down the path of going, it's really complicated. It's not normal. It's not what would feel at home to most, to most engineers. Didn't feel at home to me. And then I felt like, well, we're already trying to, and it would sort of bypass the DI side of things. Like we're kind of going, well, what should be
good.
DI?
I mean, most people who know like TypeScript language server stuff should be able to go in and look at, like you said, like and if they look at the pattern for the contract, they'd be kind of like, what's going on? Type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that then it's nice that you have like a single path to go through. You can go, this is how we can, we have documentation for developers like, hey, you need to add something, just create a service. You need this to implement this interface and register it with the DI. And then that's pretty easy. And then you get all these things for free, hopefully. And then I started thinking about if we're more declarative, where you don't get access to the actual connection to like register things to, and we're more declaring these are the notifications that I want to listen to, these are the requests that I want to work with, then we can put whatever fault tolerance safety things we want in front of that. We could worst case scenario, we eat every exception and nothing ever, no one ever knows what's going on, and it's just all logs. But I think a nicer thing might end up being something where you're going to get result objects from any time you're working with an external system. That way, you have to explicitly state, hey, this is what I'm going to do with this, or I can send it to some kind of, general handler that knows, oh, I know to send the right notifications to the right places. That way you're not, it feels more rusty at that point, but you're probably more, you're by default, it's probably you have a way less chance of something happened way down here in the stack and that I don't really have control over, know about, and some exception went right past my code up to the root and crashed the language server. That wouldn't be great. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of possibilities for what's the right move, because one thing I was thinking about doing with the plugin stuff too is ways to say that every plugin has something like every plugin would have like a health check. You could call every plugin and say, oh, is your service up? Is it working? Are there dependencies that weren't able to be resolved? And we could put that all into a nice little, debug report or something like that. But I think there's other ways of doing that too. And it probably makes sense to boundary features different than sort of like a really heavy top-down build of plugins, way to do it. So there's still things to think about there, because I'd like to, have a way to go, when we're doing health checks, is that it's something that makes sense to do on does it, when you build a package that sort of exports a certain set of functionalities, does it make sense to essentially say, well, I'm a health check provider, and then you go, okay, great. Well, I'll just, I have a health check report service, that can listen for all various health checks and, send up what I want. So I think that that's probably cleaner than needing to do it all in this sort of like monolithic approach. Everything's a plugin with a big giant setup function.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I gotta do because I got a doctor's appointment. So
yeah. Thank you so much for hanging on for so long. And Lena, I know it's late for you, so thank you.
I was thinking that was helpful, and thank you.
awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.